the Philadelphia Eagles, who should have a ton of opportunities coming their way with the current roster that they have. Last season, it was a tale of basically two teams. At the first of the year, this was a team that started 10-1. Jalen Hurts was in MVP conversations. This looked like a Super Bowl contender. Then they went in an absolute tailspin, capped off by a very embarrassing end to the season where they got absolutely trounced by the Tampa Bay Bucks. So, Jenks, I think the question is, do you think they can get out of their heads enough to return to form and the Eagles team that we saw at the first of the year?
I think they can. I don't think it can get much worse than what we saw at the end of last season. We started 10-1, finished 1-5, and I almost said there was a revolt in that locker room. That's not true. I'm just making that up in my head. That's not true. But there was absolutely tension between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. That was written about on ESPN, and Jalen Hurts was asked about this, and I think we both talked about this. Jalen Hurts, I feel like, as a personality, is a very likable guy, right? He's sort of a guy that you root for, and you're like, I don't cheer for the Eagles. I'm a Commanders guy, but from an individual standpoint, you're like, you know what? He seems like a really good dude. And so when the media was asking him questions about his relationship with Nick Sirianni, he said things like, well, that's a very good question. I'm not quite sure I know how to answer it. So he wasn't evasive, but clearly there was something going on there. I don't think it can get any worse than that. And the disconnect was on the offensive side of the football because after making the Super Bowl, both coordinators left, as we know, 2 years ago. And then now they've changed coordinators again. But I do think with Kellen Moore, who is an established guy who had success in Dallas in this very division, I think if Nick Sirianni is smart, and I think he is, he will be more hands-off. He will let Kellen Moore do whatever he needs to do offensively and sort of reshape this Eagles offense. And on paper, as we know, they just have so much talent. We were talking about Jason Kelce, and that's a huge loss. This guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer, fantastic center, and a leader. And that's one thing that it's hard to handicap because you can't quantify it, right? When you have a leader like that on your team who immediately commands respect, they have to replace that. But they still have one of the best O-lines in the game. I'm big on the Eagles this year, especially at a price of minus 120 to win the division because they didn't win it last year. And we haven't seen a repeat winner in the NFC East in 20 years. Dallas won it last year. And I think it starts with an improved offense and an improved Jalen Hurts.
I think there's a lot to like about this Eagles offense, even just from a depth chart standpoint. Look at all of the talent that they have comprised on this roster. Not only Jalen Hurts, who at one point was the favorite to win MVP last year. They've now added Saquon Barkley, who I think will explode in this offense. Think about how exciting he was to watch when he played for the New York Giants, running behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Now he gets to run behind the second-ranked offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus, and he gets plenty of talent around him. Jalen Hurts, just by matter of being a decoy on half of these plays, will help Saquon out a ton. Then you've got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert at tight end. If there's anything to like about the Eagles, it's certainly on the offensive side of things. I will say that maybe the sabotage factor is their defense because last year there were quarterbacks who weren't even the cream of the crop, who were slicing and dicing up the secondary. Look at what Baker Mayfield did in the playoffs. Beat this team 32-9. So I know they've done a couple things to try to shore up this defense, and that's a testament to the ownership. That is another pro on the list for this Eagles team is that the ownership is going to do the right moves, even if it's in season, because the Eagles have done this before where in season they've made these big moves. And what do you know? They're playing in the Super Bowl. I know, they didn't win that year against the Chiefs, but still a team that I do believe, as far as talent goes, is going to be one of the best teams in the NFL. So you already mentioned the divisional bets on how to bet this Eagle team. But what about the win total? Because it's looking like 10.5 is the win total for the Eagles. Juice the over at minus 140. Jenks, do you think this is an 11-win team?
I think so, and I don't mind that bet. But I like the division bet better because it's cheaper. And I just don't believe in the more I look at the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys are going to be good, but I really worry about them being able to run the football. because they do have a little bit more of a weakness on the offensive line than they've had in the past. And also it's going to be hand off to Zeke. Oh, and that's a yard forward as he falls to the line of scrimmage. He just doesn't run like he used to. It's going to be a running back by committee. I don't know how they're going to move the ball on the ground. I think that will take away from what they're able to do in total on offense. But I don't mind the bet if you're looking at the Eagles over. I do think there's some value there just because they had that step back last year. We forget. I mean, we have short memories when it comes to sports and sports betting. But 2 years ago, this was a team that played in the Super Bowl, and all of the talent is still there. The secondary makes me worry a little bit. They did a great job drafting to try and maybe solidify that area, but it does take time for rookies to take hold. I just like the Eagles to win the division better, but I don't mind the Eagles going over the win total.
Yeah, because there's a solid chance that both of these happen. Last year, they got to 11 wins despite a disaster to end the year. I feel like they can get to 11 this year. And plus, looking at the schedule, it's not a particularly tough season schedule for the Eagles this season. In fact, according to Sharp Football, they have the ninth easiest schedule in football. I think a lot of that is because they have the NFC South this year. Also, they get to play the Giants twice a season, which is always nice. So I do think this is an Eagles team that can soar over that win total. The other bet that I want to throw out there is if you think this is a team that can contend for the Super Bowl, if you think this is a team that's winning 11 games and you think they're going to win their division, how about putting Jalen Hurts in the conversation to win MVP? Right now, he's 16-1. He has the 10th longest odds. I was looking at some of these players that have shorter odds to win MVP over Jalen Hurts, and I'm kind of laughing at it. Like you look at Purdy, you look at CJ Stroud. Some of these guys who have I want to say they have a chance, and especially for Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy put up monster numbers last year and still didn't win MVP. So I think he's kind of out for me. Jalen Hurts was one of the favorites to win this during the Eagles stretch where they were 10-1. So I think he has a solid chance of winning again, and especially at that price. I think 16-1 is tremendous value.
I think it is too. I think that's a great bet. And there's no question with all those weapons, he could have a huge year. I worry a little bit about Saquon getting a lot of carries and maybe taking away from the number of attempts that Jalen Hurts might be able to put forth. But at the same time, Saquon can catch out of the backfield as well. And just having a threat like that in the backfield and still with a great offensive line, Jalen will probably be able to spread the ball around. He's just got so many tools with which to work. And again, a much better offensive coordinator. So at 16-1, man, that's great value on a top 10 quarterback. Yes.
Great value. I feel like I'm on the Home Shopping Network. But
Yes.
seriously, some of these players, would you rather take Jalen Hurts for MVP or Justin Herbert? I know that Justin Herbert has a brand new head coach, but still, Jalen Hurts was very much in the running. Justin Herbert, I think, is in danger of becoming one of those guys that's always dubbed the next big thing. And he's right off of it. I know he's supremely talented, but how much credit can we continue giving him before he wins an MVP or does something of that nature? Now he's probably going to win MVP, now that I say that. But you get the point that I am making.